Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for this month's end user webinar. Today we'll be discussing MasterMine ribbons and buttons that are available to you in your MasterMine reports. Now this webinar is special for a few reasons. One is we have a good sized group today that is registered and attending. Secondly, this webinar is geared towards all of our MasterMine users, whether that's MasterMine for Goldmine or MasterMine for QuoteWorks. And lastly, Rob will not be the presenter this month. I'm going to be your presenter. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Carnegie Hodges. I'm the marketing manager and active daily user of MasterMine. You typically hear me on the webinars asking questions or introducing Rob, but rest assured I've been a user of MasterMine for about a decade and handle some of our training here and, of course, our marketing and many other things. Now, if you are new to using GoToWebinar, let me first go over a couple things. Your GoToWebinar dialog has a question area, so throughout the webinar, feel free to post any questions. I'll try to handle them as they come in, or they might wait till the end, depending on the questions and how nervous I am, and don't rush through this. But if the GoToWebinar dialog is blocking your screen and you're not able to see what I'm doing, there is a little orange button with a white arrow on it on the left-hand side of that dialog. Just click that to collapse it, and if you need to ask a question, click the button again to expand it and get that question area. So let's go ahead and get started. So our agenda today will be showing you a new feature on our website, which gives you access to all of our videos. Secondly, we're going to dive into the MasterMine ribbons and buttons and perhaps a few of the Excel ones as well. And lastly, our usual MasterMine consultation giveaway. So let's go ahead and continue on to our new website item. You will find it whether you are on the MasterMine for Goldmine page or MasterMine for QuoteWorks. You'll see it under user support and videos, and just to give you guys a quick introduction to what that looks like, I'm going to pull that up for you over here. That's our MasterMine for QuoteWorks. Let's go user support and videos. So here you're going to find all of our end user webinars. That's what the page will default on, and you'll see them laid out by year and by month. Just click the buttons and you'll be able to scroll through all the different end user webinars. And we also have them broken out by topic, several different topic types, so it might be an easier way to search if you're looking for something in particular. Our quick tip videos are on another tab. We've just done 2 so far, but hopefully you've seen those come into your inboxes. And lastly, introductions and training. So our basic training end user webinars you'll find here, but introductions, those are usually to our prospects. But if you have new people in your organization, new to Goldmine, new to MasterMine, these might be helpful to give them a quick intro to it. So with that being said, I will go ahead and go back to our PowerPoint. And there's a link to actually access it without going to the users. But now on to the ribbons and buttons. So first of all, there are really 3 ribbons that come with MasterMine to help you with your report creation, making your reports nice and clean, or keeping them clean, and some things to help you interact with your database, whether it's QuoteWorks or Goldmine. So the first one we're looking at is basically, I know a lot of people get confused, and we don't want to keep you ahead and look at this first one. We will dive in and actually go into how a lot of these things work, but the first one is your MasterMine tab that's available no matter where you're at in any of your MasterMine reports. If you're on a pivot table, Drilldown Sheet, or whatever, it's always available. The little green box here, your delete log sheets and delete sheets and logs, those don't appear on MasterMine for QuoteWorks. not yet. We're working on a MasterMine updater, updater for QuoteWorks, and when that's released in our new version this year, you'll start seeing these pop up on your ribbons. The next one is available only when you're on a pivot table, and all of those are available no matter which version of MasterMine you're on. And lastly, this last ribbon, the MasterMine Drilldown ribbon, is available only when you're on a Drilldown sheet. MasterMine for QuoteWorks, the box in green, that's the one that you guys actually get a view to. So we'll go ahead and let me switch screens here to go to our goldmine. Actually, our report, we don't really need to touch goldmine. And if I can find the right thing, we'll be okay. All right. So now you should be seeing, I'll delete that. There we go. Okay, and let me move my GoToWebinar thing out of the way so I can see. Perfect. Okay, so this is a basic MasterMine report. I didn't do really anything special. We're going to go ahead and dive into our first section, the MasterMine ribbon, which, like I said, is available on all sheets of your workbook, no matter where you're at. A few of our buttons that we typically expect people to use every day. Our refresh options. This first one here, you can see it's in two sections. The top button actually refreshes all of your pivot tables. So if you have several sheets with different pivot tables or different caches of pivot tables, and I'll get into that a little bit more, that will refresh every single one of them. On the drop down, the refresh one table, pretty self-explanatory, but the refresh and optimize, that will actually refresh just the one table, but it will go ahead and optimize your columns to fit your data all in one fell swoop. Otherwise, there's the optimize columns here that you can do manually. We also think that you guys would probably use, of course, the delete sheets and logs, and well, just the log sheet. These are basically the sheets when you get a drill down, whenever you do drill downs, and some people do many. I'm guilty of that. I'll have 20 of them open at one time, just drilling down on different areas. You'd click on these basically to wipe out anything that starts with sheet. Any of these tabs that might start with sheet, any of them that start with logs, and the log sheets come up when you're using Updater. That'll make a log sheet whether you test run it or actually make actual changes to your database, and just wipe them out so you don't have to go through them one at a time. Another area that we think that you probably use daily is the snapshot. That's basically just taking your MasterMine workbook and saving it as a flat Excel workbook. You could either do a flat sheet if you just want a copy of your report to not have it refreshed, just have it where it stands, place you can refer back to. You'd use it in the same workbook. You could save it and always have that information, what the data looked at that point. You can save the current sheet that you're on in a new archived workbook, or you can actually get all sheets, every single sheet that's in your workbook, all in a new one that you can save and share with people. So that's about it for the snapshots. Other areas, the clone worksheet, we expect you probably use a lot when you're first creating the reports. You might use those you might use it often if it's something that you're always editing or wanting to see your data a different way. This I know we've gone over many times in our webinars. It's good to clone from. Don't ruin your original. The freeze and unfreeze pane, pretty self-explanatory. Just clicking on wherever you want the panes to start freezing, and you get your frozen pane. The field list is basically, you notice off to the right, I have my field list. If it's in the way of my report, If it's something I don't want to see, let's uncheck it, but I might want to bring it back, just on and off. Hide unused filters. This is one of my favorites. It's very, very simple to use. It's basically when you create a report or, well, let's start with creating a report. You have created a report with a lot of your own custom fields, and when you start off the report, you'll notice the field area, this area up at the top, is loaded with all kinds of fields to choose from, and you really don't want to have to deal with it. All you have to do is click this Hide Unused Filters, and it will get rid of any of them that doesn't have that little icon. That means there's a filter set. We can click yes, let's get rid of them, and it'll shift it, actually shift your pivot table up towards the top. So that's why it's one of my favorites. I don't have to drag and drop anything. We've gone over page setup before. Basically, you know, let's get it. Do we want this being landscape or portraits at your margins and whatnot for printing? We've gone over security in many of our webinars, but I'll just pull it up here so you guys can see it again. Remember, any changes that you make, if you're disabling the refresh or not letting people drill down to things, any changes you make in security, set a password to it so whoever opens it can't just go and take off your security settings. Share report. This is actually more for our MasterMine for Goldmine users, because this will actually share reports directly to their Gold. Select your users here, who you want this to be shared with, and when you go to Goldmine, it pulls up right up here. You can see I have many, many different reports that I shared to my own taskbar. But back to the report. And if I'm going too fast, somebody chime in and post a question saying slow down. Schedule print, we've gone over again if you wanted to, or many times scheduling. Sorry, I don't have a printer here actually, but if I schedule this, I can schedule a report to go out monthly, weekly, daily, however I want. It'll just print it from a network printer and make it available to everybody that way. Now, one newer feature, I mean, it came out in version 8. Our open report will allow you to open other MasterMine reports and have them in the same instance of Excel, which is helpful if you want to really combine reports, or if you have data that's not actually in a MasterMine report and you want to use Updater on it, use VLOOKUPs to grab other data and pull it in, or really just pull anything into the same Excel instance so you can actually work with it with all the MasterMine tools. Of course, user manual and About MasterMine, those are pretty self-explanatory. Everybody's used to About MasterMine. The next tab you get, you notice if I'm off the spreadsheet, you don't see all these additional tabs, not spreadsheet, but pivot table. When I'm back on the pivot table, I have access to our pivot table tools, and one of those being tools. So on here are our daily items we'd expect you to use, or pretty much think people use, are the roll up, roll down field, which I'm not actually in a cell right now that uses it. If you're in the data area, don't get it. Over here in the column, a row area, you'll see it turned on. And this is basically there to help you could get summaries of things. So if I don't need to see Desi Arnaz, and yes, I'm an I Love Lucy fan, I can roll up all of these so I can see more of a summary view instead of it broken out by state. It just depends on whatever field you're on. I can roll these up and see a nice summary of Desi and Lucy. What kind of contact types, well, not really what kind, but how many contacts they have in each. If I roll down, I can roll them all down at once and see how it breaks out by contact type. I'm going to go ahead and roll them up right now. when using these, something to keep in mind, we have these little plus and minus signs here. So if you want a summary view this way, this is great for some people, but if you want to know the information, you can click on the little plus sign and you can see the information for just that one particular cell, or in this instance, account rep. Excuse me. The same thing if I wanted to see how many employees we had in what state, which we don't have any of them listed, where our end users are at, we can just go on like that. You can turn on, this is another area, turn on and off your subtotals. So if I actually, I don't have anything subtotaled on end user, nothing that we could see since it's all collapsed. Let me go ahead and roll these all down, and then I could show you. There we go. Now we could turn on and off the subtotals for everybody. And these are all based on, and thank you for telling me I'm doing great. I appreciate it. Okay, let me breathe again. What's next? We did roll up, roll down. We probably expect you, and a lot of you might not be aware that we have this ability. If you have multiple different pivot tables on a sheet, this filter area up here, if you are sharing the same filters up at the top, even if they're not turned on, like contact type here, I have on both of my different spreadsheets. But if I wanted to set these to, oh, I want to see just all of our end users, and I click that here, we can have this apply filter across the tabs. Oh, select on it, and of course I get an error. Anyways, it does work. I'm just apparently having some issues here. Let me see if it does it the other way. If I double click here, there we go. You could also double click and it'll change it. You see end user got selected here. But that's what that's supposed to do. I don't know why I'm having an error, and Rob's not here to fix it for me. So we'll just move on from there. Next that we think you might use would probably be the search field content, depending on what your role is in the company or what you're looking for. Search field content is also great, especially if you're marketing or looking for particular types of, I grabbed the wrong field here, particular types of titles or states or zip codes, anything like that. You can pull into the you can pull into your report here in your pivot table, and you could actually do a search on it. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that using our title field. So if I wanted to look up, have all of our contacts that are managers or presidents, and I want to be able to segment them out without having to go through, and let's go back a minute, without having to go through and manually go check things on and off, I can do a search, and I'm just going to type in manager, and since I wanted to search on a few titles, a comma, and I'm going to keep it as an or, not an and, manager or a president, and it helps if you spell president correctly. I'm going to call this my group, and I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to run through all of the data contained in the title field and group them all together for me. You see that, my group, and so everything that had manager, specifically just manager and president, it's going to grab those in. You can do other options. It's much like working with other filters in, say, Goldmine. You can look for begins with or whatnot. That's all in there. So let's go ahead and move on from here. It looks like I have a question, so let me see if I can address that now, if I can get my question dialog to actually work well for me. Oh, and you're welcome. Somebody finds that helpful. I'm glad. That's one of our newer features in in version 8 was that search field content. So I'm glad somebody's going to get good use out of it. I love it. Next, I think that's pretty much it for our daily items that we expect you to use. The rest are more kind of having to do with your report setup and report creation. So again, we have our refresh option on this. Yes.
Excuse me, this is Rob.
Hi, Rob.
You might want to show the advanced version of the search field content dialog as well.
Okay, good thinking. Let's hit advanced. Okay, good point. Thank you, Rob, and thank you for joining us.
I've been here all along. I've just been lurking.
Oh, thank you, you stalker. Okay.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
So this is the advanced one where you, like I was mentioning, you could do begins with, you could do case sensitive, different wildcards. I'm not going to go through a sample of it again, but make you guys aware this is where you'll go to be able to access those other features. And of course, on either screen, it has a place to give the name a group, or give the group a name. So go ahead and put in your name. I did my group. If it matches a name that you have, I tried earlier to do one with management. It's going to default back to group 1 just because I have title fields name management. So just try to keep it unique. And let's go ahead and cancel that. So on to the things that are used when you're designing your reports. We went over refresh and optimize, and that's just like the MasterMine tab. The refresh and optimize will just do one table at a time and make it actually fit your data. And you've noticed, and I forgot to mention it on the other one, the last time you refresh, it gives you the date and time, so you don't have to wonder when you did it and sit there and refresh daily, or not daily, minute after minute, not remembering when you did it last. The add field, if you forget to add a field when you first create a report, or you've added a field to your gold mine since you've made the report and need to bring it in, you can do that with the add field. Just remember, if you're working with, if you're wanting to grab a field from a different table in Goldmine or QuoteWorks, so if in QuoteWorks, if you're working on the document level instead of line item, it's not going to grab line items, fields from there, only things that are on the document level. If you're working with MasterMine for Goldmine, it does grab your contact to fields automatically if you're, which are all your user-defined, any of them that you guys made yourself. It will find those, but if you're on, like this, a main contact report, it's not going to go and grab fields from your pending or history. Delete field, pretty much the same thing. It's if you've added fields that you don't really need or you don't need them anymore. Actually, let's see which one's a good one I can just delete, because we don't really show that much. I don't know. Well, the field one was just a test thing. I could delete title. We've already used it. So to use the delete, you have to actually, if it's on the side or in your pivot table fields, it has to actually be inside of your pivot table. And I'm going to go ahead and ungroup these. Another thing that I'm going to demonstrate, but let's ungroup it so I can remove it. And click on the right one, ungroup. Thank you. So I just want to remove this title field. Yes, I want to remove it, and takes it away. So it's nice to keep your report nice and clean. The edit query is really for those that are comfortable with SQL queries. Clicking that top button gives us a nice little test screen to work with. Go to town, you know, you know what to do, so I'm not going to go into that. But this does give you a nice test option to make sure you have your query correct. You can also go in a different way back into the MS query itself, which doesn't give you the test option, but some people are more comfortable with that, and I'm not going to show that. So let's move on to our Show Stats button. This is really good if you need to know like how many pivot tables are in there, how many different caches, which are the different pivot tables pulling from different areas or are not exactly set up exactly the same way, how many worksheets you have. You can show which ones you're on. It gives you all kinds of information that might be useful in your report creation. Purge inactive items. This is great when you do cleanup in your Goldmine or QuoteWorks. Purge inactive items, basically, if you've ever run a MasterMine report after you've done a major cleanup, I'm going to use Goldmine as an example. You've noticed a lot of bad information that was in one of your fields, and you've cleaned it all out, but your MasterMine reports still show all of that bad data when you look at your drop-downs. This purge inactive items, if I were to have cleaned up the status field, I can click it and it'll run through our database, see that these things aren't these corrected or these bad data entries are no longer there, and it'll wipe it out of that drop-down so you don't have to put up with them anymore. Let's go on to grouping. I know we've gone over this many, many times in several of our webinars, but this is basically manual grouping. If I wanted to group all of our inactives into one place, I can group them all. I'll name them inactives. And you can see we made a group that combines them both, and I could even move out status. And I'm getting some questions, I know. Let me see. Oh, that last one, the purge. And Jim, I'm going to get to yours, and I don't want to take too much time reading it, but I will. Right now I have a quick question to bring up. The purge remove, will the purge remove it from the spreadsheet only or future ones as well? You know, I haven't tested that. Rob, since you're here?
Yeah, so the answer is, what it does is it removes the items. Understand that it doesn't remove any data from the database. It only removes those items from the drop-down for that field, and it doesn't do it permanently. It just removes them for the present. If that data shows up in your database again, then the natural result is in the field there is when you refresh and it pulls in that data again, those will show up again.
Okay. Hopefully that answered your question, Dave. Let's go on. Where were we? So we grouped. We can ungroup, since this was our group here. I'll go ahead and ungroup again. Well, before I do, you can add to a group. So if I see, let's pretend suspect was also an inactive, I can actually click on this, add it to group, and it's going to pull those into that group that I originally had. And now I'll go ahead and ungroup. And Rob, are you wanting to say something?
How'd you know?
I heard the click.
Well, we want to answer Jim's question there too.
Yes. So if a MasterMine report has, go ahead.
If a MasterMine report has been created via Goldmine and the Open Report tool is used to open another spreadsheet in the MasterMine environment, does it then have to be opened from the Goldmine MasterMine environment? Okay, I confess I don't get that question. Sorry, Jim.
I think, Jim, anything that's in the MasterMine environment has to be.
I think what he's saying is, having opened it that way, do you then have to open it every other time that you use that same spreadsheet? And the answer is no. So so when you use that open report tool on the MasterMine menu, that the first one that Carnegie was showing, and you open up a spreadsheet for the purposes of essentially importing that data into your MasterMine environment. When you go and when you save that workbook again, when you exit out of Excel and close that workbook, it hasn't created any requirement that you then only open that sheet in Excel. In MasterMine. I think that's what the question was. It's still basically a standalone standard Excel spreadsheet, but you've just added that. You've brought that into the environment from which you could then, if you wanted to, for example, take tabs and copy those tabs into your actual MasterMine report that you do have to open up in MasterMine. That's the point of it, is to be able to have that interchange between the, let's say, the outside Excel world and the MasterMine Excel world. And his second question, which is not a question but a comment about the stats field, which I think is a really good one. So one of the things that is really useful about this stats one that you guys want to know about is the update button right there. And Jim commented about how useful this was. So let me just comment about that. If you've got MasterMine workbooks that you created with earlier versions of Excel, could be Excel 2010, 2007, 2003 even, well, even Excel 2000 since we go back that far. The pivot tables themselves and the pivot cache that's behind it could be of that older version, even though you may have saved the workbook itself as a newer version in Excel. And that's really important because those reports that have older cache versions or older pivot table versions have more limitations on, for example, how much data you can pull in. So you might find yourself trying to drag a field into the row area and you get a message that says essentially that Excel won't allow you to do this because there are too many fields in the row area. I'm sure those of you who've been with MasterMine for many years saw that message back in the past. So it's possible right here to essentially take the workbook that you're on, the pivot table that you're on actually, and the pivot cache that's behind it, and update them both at the same time by hitting that update button. So essentially you want to have the cell on the pivot table selected and hit that update button. And then when you're done with that, it'll give you a little message. When it finishes the process of updating it, it'll give you a message that says the next time you refresh this and then save the workbook, you will have, through that process, made the whole thing into a current version Excel pivot table and pivot cache, which means you can take advantage of the full memory capabilities of the newer version of Excel.
I'm glad you joined, Rob. I wouldn't have been able to answer that. Very good.
Okay, back to you, Carnegie.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so our next area, we're talking about date ranges. Let me go ahead and grab some dates in here. I'll ungroup this. Just clean it up. Oh, I always hit the wrong one. You have to click on the one that actually was the group, the one that you made into the group. Click that to undo it. Okay, so date ranges, a lot of people see like our create on dates, or when you're dealing with pending or history reports, we break them out by month and week, or different ways, years. But date ranges is great, and we just did a quick tip on it for spreading this out. So our demo dates, for instance, if I wanted to have this by years and months or maybe even quarters, it'll actually spread those out for me, take that date and group them other ways. So you'll notice when you do that, you don't keep, let me go ahead and go back here to optimize my column. It doesn't keep the actual date name like demo date here. Now we just have quarters and years, so if I'm working with multiple different dates, you'll want to go ahead and change that to demo, just clicking on the title of that field. I'll put demo up in the formula bar here, and now I can always distinguish between which types. You can use this date range to really segment your data. You can use it as a starting point. Everything's checked on right here, but if I only wanted to see all of our dates that began say 1/1/2013, and on anything before that's going to be put into a group of before 1/1/2013. You see that little group here, and I can, and everything after that's going to be after 2013. Pretty self-explanatory. You can also get age from a date. let's go back. Let me ungroup these things because that is just all group 2, isn't it? Yes. Okay. So if I grab our create on date and I want to know how many days, and you'll notice all of these 1/1/1981s that show up in your reports, that's basically if you're working with the date field or working with history and pending reports, if you see that number in there, and you can have it set as a different default, but it's basically a placeholder. You have to have something there, and it can't just give you a blank. So that 1/1/1989 just means it's blank, and you can click on that field and just highlight over it and put a space in it, and it'll clean that up for you quite a bit. Looks a little neater. But if you wanted to get the age from today, when this was from today, the week grouping, since you're working with dates and Excel, actually, if I go back here to just our date ranges, you notice that weeks is not part of this. That's basically because months overlap with your weeks. You know, your month might start midweek, so it doesn't have that, but we have the capability of giving you week grouping, and you can have it start right now. Our 1/1/1989, that was a Sunday, but if your week runs from Monday to Sunday, you'd select the next Monday you want to start with, and it'll group them out 7 days from there. I don't think I really need to show that, so I'm just going to leave that there. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but if you want me to, just put it in the questions. You might have some fields in your Goldmine QuoteWorks that are being used as date fields, but the field was not actually originally set up as a date field. You would use this text as date. It would actually just kind of change it for the pivot table to make it look at it like it's a date. And if I'm not mistaken, and Rob, you can correct me, but if you have other data that's not dates in there, it just kind of ignores it to work with this data as a date, right?
Well, it would if what it's reading is a character data that can't be translated into a date, then it will show up there as 1/1/1989 or whatever, what we call a dummy date that you choose to include in place of a non-date.
There you go. Thank you, sir. Next thing, and I'm going to use this price field for this. Let me get rid of all these. I just want to simplify, and I don't want to see anything with zeros. Next, we have number ranges, which I don't think we've really gotten into in any of our other webinars, but number ranges actually allows you, and this is great if you're working with pricing or number of users, if you're looking for a particular number of users of a product.
Or 30, 60, 90 aging.
Yep, there you go. Since I'm using a price field here, if I wanted to see everything that's, I want it grouped by, let's see, I want to start with 50. So anything under $50 I want put in one group, ending at, and I might actually, yeah, unchecking it actually does it. So everything 50, 50 and higher, and I want these grouped by the 50s instead of defaults to 1,000, but I want my groups to show every $50. Ending at, you can keep that checked on if you don't really want to have it ending, but if you want everything, let's say, I'm going to uncheck this and put the, I want to stop everything over 1,000. I want to be in a different group. I want that all just 1,000 or greater. So 50 or less, 1,000 greater, and everything in between in groups of 50. I'll go ahead and hit OK, and you can see how it's grouped everything together. And this, as opposed to our manual grouping where you go through before and group items, this will actually update as your reports open. When you refresh, if more data is added into these areas, these prices in this instance, this will refresh. It'll keep that grouping here on out. Let me go ahead and get back here to, I don't think that's going to do anything. There we go. Everything. Can't I just ungroup that? There we go. That's what I wanted. So back to price. We have our number format, so you don't have to go searching around for different kinds of ways to format. So this is price. I want these to be dollars. I want some cents to show in here.
And Carnegie, let's make the point. You don't actually have to have all those cells selected to format them. One of the big points of these tools is because in a pivot table, it may not be at all convenient to go and select an entire set of data like that. All you have to do is have one item in the field that you want to format selected, and that's enough to be able to apply that format to the whole field.
Good point. Thank you, sir. So let's get it just back to regular dollars. It's our comma. Same thing as the text to date. If you have fields that are being used as numeric fields, but there's other data in there, or it wasn't originally set up as just a number field, you can click that, make it read it like it's a number field, and everything else will be grouped differently. And let's go ahead to a drill down sheet, because that's every button there. I'll double click on one of our total items, and I probably should have done a smaller one like 28, but that's okay. Not a whole lot of data here. So from here we get the MasterMine drill down tab. As I mentioned, you guys on QuoteWorks have a little bit different view, but it's going to change with our new release. But for those of you using MasterMine for Goldmine, you might not be aware if you're not really using groups in Goldmine, but if you're using groups to do some mass data cleanups, not using Updater, or for marketing opportunities like email blasts, email merges, you can actually make your Goldmine groups from here. You can pick and choose which ones you want to include, or you can just select the whole sheet, hit Goldmine group, and it'll ask you to make a group name. You can sort it if you want to, alphabetize in any way you want. You can give it a reference field. I typically don't use any of those. Just give it a name, whoever I want to assign it to, which is typically myself, and you can even give it a group code if you want. And once you're done with that, hit OK. You go back over to Goldmine, you have your group. Most of you are familiar with double-clicking and pulling up a Goldmine item, or a Goldmine item. Double-clicking and either pulling up a Goldmine account or a QuoteWorks document. But you can also hit that pop record. It'll do the same thing. And if I happen to be on a history or pending report when you're working with Goldmine, you can actually click on whatever line item you're interested in seeing more detail in, and click this edit activity, and it will not only pop the Goldmine record, but it will pull up that exact activity for you to make any changes to or look at more closely. Which is great. When we just had pop record, you had to go and search through all of your history trying to find the right one. So love that item. Updater, we recently just did a webinar, I think that was February, on an intro to Updater. So that's just, if you guys aren't familiar with it or you guys don't have it, this is a way to make mass changes to any area of your Goldmine data, whether it's history, pending, opportunities, cases, projects, main contact details, all that good stuff you can do with Updater. When you use Updater, it gives you an option to test your changes before you actually force them to go through or actually make the changes into Goldmine. And if you do a test version, you have the option once you review your information to actually finalize. That will trigger the actual updating capability to go in there and make the changes to your gold mine. And of course, from those log sheets, if you've made a mistake, just about everything that you make changes in, except really if you're deleting pending or history or information, you can come in here and undo it. If you're just making regular changes, you can, from the log sheet, undo anything that you've done. So our last little area is formatting the drill down. You have your drill preferences, which basically not something I've ever really gotten into, but you can drill down wait a minute, open new window.
Do you want me to say that?
Yes, please, because I forgot this part.
So you can set preferences as far as what you want to have happen when you drill down to gold mine. Now, and really that related more to older versions of goldmine that didn't have the that didn't have the multiple tabs that you currently have in goldmine. In earlier versions, it was a little bit harder to make sure that the account record that you thought you were drilling down to would be brought up on the front of the screen. I think that's probably not much of an issue for many people anymore. The key things here would be the top ones versus the bottom ones. So the top ones have to do with how do things show up on the actual drill down page when you drill down to it. So if you check do not format data or headers on the drill down sheet, then that means that your data, the data that shows on the screen would not show any substitute values. So for example, in the MasterMine pivot table under activity type, where the actual goldmine data shows it actually only contains a C or an A for a call or an appointment, we go ahead and substitute a value of the full word call and the full word appointment. And you actually, as a user, can substitute any value by just simply typing over the value that's there. Those 1/1/1989s, for example, when you, as Carnegie demonstrated before, you can substitute a space for a 1/1/1989 in the pivot table just by hitting a space bar literally over one of them, and it replaces all of them all the way through the pivot table for that field. So when you drill down, the actual drill down wants to show you the actual data that's contained in the pivot table. So for the activity types, you'll see only a C or an A, but not the spelled out call or appointment. You'll see the full 1/1/1989 as opposed to just a space that you might have substituted for it. The purpose of that is really to be able to see what is the actual contents of the goldmine database, as opposed to what did I translate this into for the purposes of my report. Long explanation there, but it's useful mostly for a goldmine database administration function. So when you're cleaning up data, it comes up fairly frequently that you really want to know what's there in the database, not just what did I label this for my report, because I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to do some changes out there. The second item there, vertical alignment of rows, that comes into play especially when you're doing a report that involves notes. If you had notes, you would see all of our notes field, or excuse me, you'd see all the rows at various widths or various heights, really, because notes might have one line, or they might have 10 lines in them. And then the question is, what do you want to do with all the other fields in that drill down page? Do you want them all to be at the bottom of their respective cells, or do you want them to be at the top of their cells or in the middle of their cells if you've got a multi-line cell to fill, with that data in it?
Good to know.
That's all.
That's it. Okay. Another new feature with 8 was the sort columns, or that might have actually came out in 7. I don't remember, but sort columns is great for those of you that use your drill down sheets often. You might not like the way that it shows up, what order things show up in. So clicking this, you actually have the ability to move your fields around. If I wanted contact type up first, I could just drag, or I could actually drag them up, product interest if I want to. Move all these things where I want them, so when I drill down, that's what I'm seeing, the order I want to see them in, not the order when I first created the report. I clicked on items and they're just any way that it seems fit. We're going to make this customized to us. Now, instead of hitting done, done will actually just change it for the pivot table that you're on. If it's not something you want to have all of your drill downs, you just hit done and that sheet is changed and move on. But if you want to actually change how all of your drill downs appear from here on out, what order they appear in, hit this save, and it's going to go in. And there's another error. Boy, I'm having errors today. Not good. And it's not letting me out.
Sorry, I didn't see what you were doing.
Oh, I hit save to change my order of pivot tables.
Okay,
Usually
so the name
works
of it.
for me.
Yeah. It's because of the kind of the messing around that you did to prepare the report for the webinar. It's not something that would come up for most people.
Yeah.
Are you unable to hit OK?
It just keeps popping back up.
Just keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Just keep doing it.
Yeah, it's going to run through all the fields
there
trying to fix them.
And display the attempt. That's it. No, I don't want to display.
Yeah, no. You made the point.
There we go. So you can sort it, and it's going to work for everybody else, just not me in this report right now. Inherit print format. I think that's also pretty self-explanatory. You want this to basically inherit whatever print format you have set up. Rob,
yeah. So if you have set up a print format for the page for the let's say the sample 2 tab in this workbook, which is where your pivot table is, you might have set up a format, for example, to do adjust the width so that it all fits on one page, but it runs for as many pages as it needs to. That's one example of the print format. By hitting that button, the Inherit Print Format button, what it does is it goes and looks for the print format that you've applied to the subsequent page, in this case the Sample 2 page, and apply it to the page that you're on.
Very good, very good. Okay, so that's it for all of our MasterMine ribbons, and these were the ones that were pretty much available to those that are on MasterMine for QuoteWorks. This will come to you with our next version release, and I will preface with the Updater for QuoteWorks will only work on document level and line item level, not product level updates. So just wanted to make you aware, but it is coming out with the next release. I know we're running close to end of time. There's one more area, or kind of 2 more areas I wanted to point out, and that's under this pivot tables. When you're on the pivot table sheet, you have a few other options to work with. Now these are Excel based only, comes with Excel. We just kind of grouped them all together here. Key thing, your pivot chart, if you wanted to insert a pivot chart, making dashboards or just want to see things in a nice pie graph, you'd come here for that. The design option, just let's find ways to make your reports even prettier. You can actually add some colors to it, and since I don't have much data in here, it's not going to really display well, but gives you some ideas. You're not stuck with that plain white report that you always have. You can prettify it. You can display your subtitles, and you could show them on the top or bottom. We default everything on the bottom here. You can turn on and off your grand totals if it's not really what you want to look at right now. If you just want to see just the data, you don't have to see your grand totals off to here. Report layout gives you, and I will go ahead and show this really quick. I'll just grab something else in here. Right now we're showing things in tabular form. We can compact this. You see how it brings it all into one field here. You can show an outline form. And back to tabular. But if you're running a report, say you don't want to run from a drill down sheet, but you want to print a report, but everything has to show, instead of Desi Arnaz and everything set out like a tree like this, you can actually have it repeat on every line. So if you wanted a very detailed, this is all our information, and I need it on every single line, we can have it show up actually on every single line. Back to the Design tab, but I want to do not do. You can insert or remove blank rows in between all of your different columns here. So just some options there, make you guys aware, and that's pretty much it for Analyze. Something I haven't dealt much with, but a lot of people like working with some calculated fields. So under Analyze, you can actually make your data area, pull in some calculated fields if you wanted to get a difference from or percentage of any kind of data that's sitting in there, any kind of number. You can get a calculated field. For me, I turn to our report writers for those, but it's up to you. If you guys are comfortable with formulas and whatnot, go for it. So that, I think, is pretty much it for the webinar. Rob, is there anything you want to add about the buttons or ribbons?
I don't think there's anything major. Let's see. You might want to just sort of let people know that when you were adding fields, or when you hit the button that took the fields out of the pivot table, took the fields out of the page area of the pivot table. If you go back to that.
The page area of the pivot table.
Sorry, if you go back to the MasterMine toolbar.
MasterMine. There we go.
The item above there for hide unused filters.
Yes.
It just may not be clear that when we say hide, what we're essentially doing is just moving, in this case, contact type, state, create on, and demo date out of the visible pivot table and putting it into the field well on the right-hand side, where it says, in big green letters, pivot table fields, and they're listed there. Those fields are already there, and they can always be retrieved from there easily. When we say hide, what we're essentially just saying is we're putting them, or we're taking them out of the visible field of the pivot table, but leaving them there available to you.
Just putting them in the cubby for later use.
Yes.
There we go. Good point, Rob. Thank you. So with that, I see Jim. I'll probably have Rob talk to you after and see what's going on there. Sally, will we get an overview of this webinar? I need to review Goldmine update info. You will actually get a copy of this webinar sent out tomorrow. It'll send out automatically, so you'll get a webinar recording. And it will also be on that new webpage I showed you guys. So with that, let's go ahead and do our free giveaway. So Rob, do you want to announce a winner this week, or do you want me to?
I will go ahead and announce the winner. So our winner today is, among those who are still in attendance, Danielle Schounot, S-C-H-O-U-N-N-O-T. Schounot?
Danielle, congratulations. And Danielle, I don't even know how to say your last name, but congrats. We'll give you a call after the after the webinar.
I apologize for mangling your name.
Okay, well, I think that's it. If there's any other, oh, and you said it right, Rob. Good to go.
Okay.
But thank you, everybody, for attending. And like I said, you'll get a copy of this tomorrow in your inbox. And if
everybody give Carnegie a great big round of applause.
Yeah, thank you.
For her first webinar. Well done.
Oh, thank you so much. And I guess that's it. Thank you, everyone. And we will talk to y'all soon.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.